Hello everyone. So I just hit upload and my previous video is in the process of uploading, but while I was editing it to get it onto YouTube, I did see something with this particular line here. And for consistency, I want to go ahead and actually put this as another field separator first. And then this is because we might be adding more and more attributes. So we want to keep that consistent. But then at the very end, we will do the send output, which equals again the send output. And then here at the very, very end, we will do the line separator. So this will help us more in the future, keeping everything organized if we have to add in extra rows, which I am planning on adding in when we get to that point. But we needed to have this in effect before we do anything else. So now that we've got this in order where we're going to be able to create new users when there's nothing already there, we need to make sure that we can get the currently existing users. We need to update the all users and then continue from there. So how are we going to grab the data that's already out there? This is going to be by doing basically the reverse of what we did up above here. So instead of building this by putting the pieces one together with the field separator, we're going to have to take an entire line and then break it up based on the line separator and then the field separators. So to do that, then the first thing we're going to do, we're still going to use this check file and we're just going to load it. But to load it, we need to put this data into something. So let's just do a string here. It's going to be the file contents. And we're just going to say this is set to be the load data of the check file, which we already looked for. And that's the only attribute it needs. It's going to put everything in as a single line. Now, once we get this in, it's saying, check to make sure that the contents aren't null. That's actually not a bad idea to do. We already know the file exists. So it's probably going to exist with data. However, it's always good to be on the safe side. So let's go ahead and actually put in this check. And what we're going to say is else down here. So if it fails for whatever reason, we're going to do a message box show the file did not contain any data. Error. Okay, and I will actually specify because we want to give as much information to the user as possible, so we can actually put this with check file plus, and I will actually put it this way where we go the space check file space plus. Okay, so this will actually list out the name of the file, and it'll say did not contain any data. So at least this way we notify the user that there was a problem. They can decide what to do at that point. I'm not going to make it where this closes the program at this point. Maybe they can go back and do a file new and keep going. So we'll leave them that opportunity to do whatever they need to at this point, but they will have the knowledge of what went wrong. Now, assuming that this is working correctly, we do get data. How do we get the contents of the data that we pulled out? This is all just one string variable now, but we need to break it up based on the separators that we put into place. So the first thing is we're going to need a string, and we're going to make it an array because we're going to be splitting the string into different values. So the file contents, the first split, we're going to do file rows. And that's going to be the file contents.split. And we're splitting this one on the line separator. To get the specific things from this array, we now need to iterate through it. So this is going to be another, it'll be for I, we'll use the, for int I equals 0. It's going to go up to, well, actually, it filled it out for us. So it's going to go up to the length of this file content, or the rows, the individual rows. And while we go through this time, now we're going to need another array where we do the file fields. And that's going to be the file content, or the file row that we're currently on. So it's the indexed row that we're on. And we're going to split this one. And this time it's going to be by the field separator. Now at this point, the array of the file fields has been created. And all we need to do is add this data in to our object. So if we look back up here, we've got the list of all users. What we're going to need then is just a temporary value down here of a specific user that we're going to then add to our list of all users. So we'll do user of the file user is a new user. And this file user ID is going to be the file row, not the file row, the file field's first option. Now, it's not listed as an integer here. We need to convert this to an integer. And to do that, we do int.parse, and we put this in parentheses. This will cast that into an integer, which is what the file user.id wants. As you can see here, it actually autofills what our next line will be. It's the username. The username is already a string, so we don't have to worry about it. Now that we've got this row, we just add this to all users. So we add file user. And then this will iterate through and pull all of the users through that we need. So now, if we actually go back and run this again, at this point, we got an input string is not in the correct format. So I believe that when this splits it up, it's going to the length. Let's try what happens if we do length -1. So we get this here. Let's see if we can add another one now. So it's got my name on there, but we still need to determine from the user which user to use now that there are multiple users to pick from. And also, we need to check and see if it does catch duplicates. So let me start this again. So the file was found, programs entered. What happens if I try to put my name in again? So here, submit. So it does check. Unfortunately, the username is already being used. So that is good. Now we can click here. User cannot continue. That is working as intended. And of course, because this now has this up there, oops, hit that. It's now saying that the username is not on there. So, and then just because I'm a little paranoid, let me just make sure that everything still looks good in here. And oh, okay, I was not expecting it to actually have added that. And it added it without no, it does have the index 2. So here it is, the 2 is here. So this is actually making that into a user, which we don't want. So what I'm going to do, it's a good thing I was paranoid on this one. So I'll take that out and save it because I don't want to delete it now. All right, so when this comes through, let's see, where is it adding that in? So if there is a duplicate, so first of all, it finds the file here. This is that part there, continue is true. And then it comes and loads this. When we come back up to here, we're creating the user. This is a new address. Let's do that. Let's do. Ooh, so this is added here. Okay, I think what we can do is when we come down to here, before we actually prompt the user, maybe this will work. We want to make sure when we're clicking on a new one that we remove anything that currently exists as the username. So if we say current user dot username, and let's set this to null. Let's see if this makes a difference now, because I'm interested in this. So the troubleshooting is actually one of the things that I really like to do. So if I then cancel out of here, it says user cannot continue. We got to this, so I exit here. Was that sufficient as we come back into here? Or is there still an issue? Okay, that was it. So clearing out the username before we go in is what we needed to do on there. So we will find different things like this that we'll need to do to fix things. And just again, to fully test this, so if we come in, did that actually, I'm not sure that this loaded correct. Let me see what we got here. So file was found, program entered, and it's not showing. Oh, it's because I don't have it set in there. So that's not a problem yet. But now if I come into here and we know that this part is working, what happens if I come back into here now and say Peter, submit, that username is already being used, but it actually has changed it to here. Not a huge major thing, but let's make somebody named Paul. We go into here. Everything looks okay. Let's close out. And let me just see if this looks correct from here. Paul is actually in there twice. All right, so I think I got the solution, and I'm kind of kicking myself because this if statement here, what happens is after it's done and it does all of these, it comes back and then it continues past. I'm pretty sure that's what it's doing. So then it does this section. But if we put this into an else statement, then it will skip that when it returns. It'll go to the end of the else. So if we put all of this into here, I think that might be sufficient to fix the issue that we've got. So let me save that. So I can get rid of the debug because we don't need that anymore. And in fact, I mean, probably keep this around, but if I ever need it, I'll just recreate it. So we'll save that. And finally now we can go and continue on to fix the issue when we come in like this. File found, program entered, and there's no username, plus we can't select a user. So let's fix that finally. So the first thing we want to do to fix that is come up to project, and we're going to create a new form. And just like how we created the add user form, this time we're going to create a select user form. And you guessed what we're going to do. It's going to open pretty close to the same way the add user opened. And the user is going to be able to select which user they want, or we'll give them the opportunity to create a new user from here. So again, I like to expand this out to give me a little bit of real estate to work with and then collapse back down when I'm done and I know what size it's going to be. Like last time, we're not going to have a menu put onto this because it's going to function like a dialog box. So the way that I want to be able to pick the user is to use a list box. This will let us put a series of data in, and we'll be able to select the one we want from that box. And we're going to need two buttons. The first button will be over here. We're going to call it button select. And let's just call this select user. And the second button that we're going to include down here, we'll put it just a little bit lower down, and let me make sure it's lined up with the other one. And this button, we're going to call button new user. And this text will say new user. Now, one thing I probably should do as well is we can come up to this and use the and sign again so that an Alt-S will work there. And then we can come here and do the and n, so a new user can go into this. So this probably is going to be good enough for the size of our dialog box. We might even think of, I actually think I might prefer these buttons being down here like this, and actually we'll make this just a little bit bigger. There's not going to be any restrictions on how big a username can be, the size of the text, or anything like that. At least I'm not putting any on. You can feel free to look for that, but let's just do this. That's going to be good enough for now. The list box, we do want to abbreviate because I don't want to feel like typing list box the entire time I want to reference it. So L box will let me know it's a list box. And this is going to be the user list. So that's going to be what it is. how these function is that we can put data into these actual boxes. So we can put the list in, but we are going to have to manipulate the list of users that we got. One big thing is this, again, is its own separate universe from the regular form. So we're going to have to get the data into this box to begin with. Then we're going to have to select it. And when a user is selected, we're going to need that user to get sent back to the original form. So how do we set that up? We've already created the method to create a new user. So all we have to do is reference that back. So we can double click on this button. So now when we come into here, we know all we have to do is send the dialog result back. If you need a refresher on that, remember that if we come up to the add user, we've got it right here. Just copy this, come back over here, paste that in. The only thing is we don't really want it to say OK because that's not really an option, right? Well, the problem is that the dialog results are limited. We don't have an infinite number of them. So if I delete this out and hit this, you can see we can say yes, cancel, OK, abort, cancel, down here, continue. There's different options like that. What I'm thinking of doing for this one is we'll use the no. So when the answer, the dialog result is no, it means that this button was clicked. So I picked no because it starts with N and new user starts with N as well. So that's just a way for me to track it. You can literally make it any dialog result you want from the list because we're defining it ourselves. So this is actually one way because we know whenever we click on new user, it's sending back the result of no. And so we know in the other form 1 that we would be able to just call the new user function, which is over here. So we can just come in and have it go through to create a user, right? But in order to get that to work, we also need to create the window to pop up in the first place. Because right now, this form exists, but there's no way to get to it from this form 1. So we know at this point, we've got all users. After it gets this, we want it to now create the window. And we do this the exact same way that we did for the add user. So we start off with select user. And we're just going to call this the select user form. And it is a new select user. And there we go. So all we have to do is to do our select user form dot show dialog. And now we actually have a way to get from this window to this window here. Then all we would need to do is check that feedback coming back. So we know if select user form show dialog is equal to not OK in this case, but no, then we know at this point user wants to create a new user. So all we have to do is use our create user form. That part's done. All right, and so then we can just test this. And what happens when we run this now? So I'm going to remove this file was found because we don't need that anymore. So we start with the file was found, so we need to select a user. We haven't filled this out yet, but that's okay. Now, if we click new user, we get the same form, which wasn't supposed to happen. But now it enters, and now this loads. So let's see what happened. So it's coming through here. Select user. Okay, I can see what's going on with this. So because this put it into the if statement, again, the IntelliSense actually grabbed the wrong thing. What I actually want to check is dialog result. So what it was doing is it opened the form here, and then in the if statement, it opened it a second time. So it was creating two forms. Let me save this. Now let's run this and see what it does. So, oh, I forgot that. But if we hit new user now, this is what I was expecting. So let me close out of that. User can't continue, programming, or blah, blah, blah. That's fine. So let's go up to file was found. We don't need this line anymore. So we can save that with this out. Now we just need to populate this box with the data that we had. So how do we do that? So the first thing is, let's come up to the top. We want to make this variable here, the list of all users, accessible in the other form. To do that, we have to declare it as a public list. And you can see here, it's got a squiggly line under here, and it says that the field type cannot be less accessible than the field from the form.one.all users. Now, this at first seems a bit confusing, but what it means is when we come to the user itself, it defaulted these to an internal class, and we just need to make this public as well. So I'll save that there, come back over here, and now you can see that this all users is now no longer having the alert. To get it into the other form, though, we still need to come back to this form, come up here to the top, and we need to get an instantiation of our first form. So to get that, we can just put form1, and I'm just going to call it fm1. fm1, and we can just do the semicolon. That's all we need to do at this point. It will give us the ability to use data from form1 now. So if we come down here, let's just use a quick, we can do a user test user is a new user. And now that user is public, we can use that here. And what we can do here is, let's say test user .id is set to fm1, which we created up here, fm1 dot all users, and we'll take the 0th index dot id. So this is the first part of linking this together. So let's get rid of that because we're not going to use that anymore. So what we'll do now is we'll actually correct this to make it the right. Hello everyone. So that last jump was brought to you by the issues I've been having with Adobe Premiere. I was trying to export the end of this video, and for whatever reason, it just kept finding errors in missing frames and things like that. So I'm hoping that cutting out the ending, redoing this bit of it will help to make this actually work. So where I was at was I just showed what would happen when we made the static with the form1. What we actually need to do to make this work so far is we actually come over to form1 and we make this into a public static variable here. So not just public, but also add static there. Then when you're back in the select user, you don't even need the form1 up here at the top at all. We can actually just reference it directly here with the all users. So what I'm doing with this is we're just looping through the users that are there, and we're adding it to the listbox items that are showing in the items there. And this is what happens when we do this change. So I run this. Now this listbox appears, and we have the people who exist in the file already. Obviously, we don't yet have the ability to do anything since the select user doesn't actually select anything yet. You can double click on here, nothing will do anything. We can cancel out and it'll just say it's entered, but there's no user. And the reason it goes into entered, by the way, is because we need to come back to this part here and handle the else when it's not the dialog result of no. So that's going to be the next video. Is I will wrap this up. I don't want to risk going too much longer with this, given how my Premiere program has been crashing recently. So I want to hopefully get this one updated, and then we'll quickly finish this in my next video. If this works, you guys will hear this. Otherwise, I do hope you have a wonderful day either way. So take care.